So I sort of went through school working very hard but getting average grades or below average grades, and I didn't really realise why. So I didn't think it was because I wasn't smart enough, because my performance in the classroom, I was clearly able to keep up with everybody. But for some reason it came to an exam and I couldn't get the result that everybody else could get. By coincidence, Channel 4 were running a series on dyslexia about that time. And so I thought, okay, this sounds like something I've got. So I booked an assessment and went and had myself tested, and it came back positive, and I discovered I was dyslexic. And from there on, actually, kind of everything changed. So I was in high school. I was working very hard and getting very average grades or poor grades. At university, I was working far less hard and getting brilliant grades, because I'd learned a lot of stuff in between that time to sort of deal with the sort of dyslexic symptoms that I didn't know about before. So my dyslexia is actually quite mild, and actually once I learned to cope with it, it's almost not been a problem at all, or not a noticeable one that I can, that I think about day to day. But at that stage it was. So school was very frustrating, high school was very frustrating, and effort didn't seem to correlate to results at all. Assessing myself was purely sort of me trying to figure out what was wrong, why I wasn't doing better, looking stuff up on the internet, which was very challenging, because if you're dyslexic, dyslexia is a very difficult word to spell. So I literally sort of looked online to see where I could get tested. Channel 4 had information about this, contacted the British Dyslexic Society and did an assessment. And within a very short time, I think it was less than an hour, the actual standard assessment, the person told me, you are dyslexic, you've got these symptoms, and this is what's going on. More helpfully, actually, as a list of recommendations of books you should read and how to cope and things you should look up. And that's actually, I think, what helped me the most. So it's books like Tony Buzan's Use Your Head, The Gift of Dyslexia, things like that. And they were sort of coping strategies for any sort of symptom that may come up. I took a year out working between A-levels and uni. So I spent this time sort of going through this material, picking up some of these skills, trying to figure out how to sort of better cope with the situation. And I did things like speed reading, spent a lot of time learning to speed read, because I was having to read things several times over to understand it. So I thought, actually, there's no way around that. I can't process it faster, but I can read it much faster. If I have to read it 18 times, I'll do it. So that was a big deal. And actually, when I had that measured at university, they said you're in the sort of top 2% of reading speeds. And now I can read all the time. So it's had a massive effect on me. So I started university after a year out at high school, after a year out of education, a computer science degree at Brunel. I actually hadn't got in to university, I hadn't got the grades to get into university on my A-levels. My A-level grades were very, very bad, so this is pre-assessment. After I got my assessment, I sort of rang around universities and I said, this is what's happened. There's a chance I could come in, do an interview and see if I can get a place. And actually a tutor at my high school helped me do this. And Brunel said, yes, of course. And I went and did an interview and they gave me an unconditional offer. And that's how I got into university. First semester of university, I worked hard, did sort of very, very well, sort of got A's for everything. So the first time in my academic career I'd done well on that level. And university was sort of that story right the way through. And I actually didn't have to work so hard. I actually wasn't working as hard as other people were. So there was, in short bursts, I found I was, pre-exam, pre-coursework, I'd do 2-3 weeks of solid 10-hour days working, and the rest of the time there's very little work. Computer science, because people come in at so many different levels, was lucky in that they don't try and take the whole group through the course at once. There was maybe 5 to 7 hours of timetable lectures, and the rest you're supposed to study yourself. So I didn't have the constraints that I had at school, where I was trying to keep pace with the group, or I was ahead of the group and getting frustrated. I was just left to do my own thing, which worked very, very well for me. So I'd go in and do my 5 hours, and then the rest of the time figure out what I needed to know and how I needed to learn it. Some bits were still challenging, so you have to read a whole textbook. It takes quite a lot of effort and making notes on stuff. But I literally sort of sat down and forced myself through it and read textbooks, and I'd had no sort of professional help on dealing with dyslexia at this point until my second year of uni. So first year of uni, I was literally sat down with the textbook. If I didn't read it over and over again, make notes, make different forms of notes, and it was a massive amount of effort went into overcoming that at the start. But that sort of paid off, and it became less and less and less and less, and became actually quite easy a few years down the road. In my second year of uni, I realised that the university offered help to dyslexic people, and I just it hadn't been picked up on my admission that I was dyslexic, even though I put it down. And I went into their centre and had a chat with them, and they offered me all sorts of things. Things like aesthetic tuning, which is they help, apparently the white page isn't the best colour for people to read on, and they help you sort of tune your vision to read to white, if that makes sense. And I went in and did that, and I explained that, you know, I've been actually forcing myself to read these textbooks, and I was getting headaches and all sorts of things, but I was doing it anyway. And they said, oh yeah, that makes perfect sense, because, you know, we've done this test on you. You should actually be reading on a very dark background, and you've been forcing yourself to read on a bright white background. So that sort of problem, that helped me with that problem a lot. This was also where I got my reading speed, writing speed, all that sort of stuff assessed, and they said, actually, it's very fast now, that's why you're coping very well. And that was kind of a deliberate effort from reading sort of books on dyslexia and trying to overcome the problem. So I met with a sort of dyslexia tutor every week. She helped me, if you like, sort of put my own thoughts together rather than anything else, and sort of focusing on what I was doing. So I had quite a scattergun approach where I was reading lots of stuff, doing lots of stuff, and she sort of helped me put some structure to it, go through, plan out what I want, talk through ideas with me, and that sort of process, which I found very, very helpful. And I actually still have those sorts of processes in play today. So end of university, I got a first-class degree with honours, so I think they were quite happy about letting me in, even though I didn't have the grades. That's from A-levels being sort of Ds and Cs. While at university, I was working sort of as an IT contractor, getting professional jobs in the periods I had off. So I'd done a 4-year course which allowed for a year of work experience, and there were sort of obviously long breaks in the middle where I could get these little IT contracts and do them. So I wasn't at all qualified to do these IT jobs. I'd literally, you know, put a suit on, make myself look old and serious, and apply for the jobs. I think I was kind of trying to prove myself really after sort of discovering I was dyslexic, and I went to apply to enough jobs. Eventually, got my foot on the ladder, got a serious job at a local council, actually deploying quite a large IT system across their thing, age 19, and did it. I put a lot of effort into doing it right. I wasn't sure while I was doing it whether I was doing it well or not. Everybody seemed happy, but on completion and when it was time to leave, the feedback I got was extremely positive, which actually surprised me a lot, because I couldn't tell. It was my first job. I left that, and I sort of kept doing these little contracts in between university. Basically, I sort of built speciality in a niche and then carried on doing it. And I found actually, if I was given a great deal of autonomy, I could find my way and do a good job and deliver results that people were happy with. The jobs that I didn't like were where I was stuck in a structure that I couldn't really influence that much or couldn't really change. And it didn't make sense to me why the structure was that way. So if someone could justify this is why we're doing this, then that's fine. But if there wasn't an opportunity to do things or make things better or improve stuff, then I wasn't really so happy. So when I'd left university, I had a degree, I had experience in IT, which was my interest from the beginning, in lots of different areas, from consultancy to coding to, you know, testing software to customer support, through these short contracts. One thing I realized was I was leaving these contracts early, and a lot of the time leaving higher paid jobs and looking for lower paid ones, and taking lower paid ones, because the challenge had gone from it. So I'd come in, it was very difficult, I'd work very hard, develop some level of proficiency, and then reach a level where there's not a lot more to learn, or there's not a lot more to do, and you know, I was going to sort of stay on that level for a period, which didn't really interest me that much. I wanted to learn new skills, I wanted to develop myself some more. I thought, you know, I saw my career in 10 years' time being a lot more than doing some little IT job, and I wanted to learn as many skills as possible for doing that. So I was actually leaving jobs out of frustration or boredom, or because there was no challenge left. And so this gave me a great deal of experience, but also told me a lot about myself, in that, you know, the corporate career might not be the way to go for you, because you're not so suited for that for many, many reasons. So I hadn't, well, I thought about starting a business. I hadn't seriously figured out how I would do this yet, or anything like that at all, or how it would be funded, or how I would pay for it, or stuff like that. Just no clue. But after finishing my first degree, one thing I did realise was I actually like being a student quite a lot as well. I'd like to do that for one more year if I could before taking life seriously. So I enrolled on a master's. I also wanted to get out of technology a bit, because I felt like I needed to develop my skills beyond IT. So I took a degree course at King's College London, which was called Digital Culture and Technology. It was an MA in Digital Culture and Technology. And it appealed to me because it let you do modules in almost everything, from philosophy to psychology to arts to technology to almost anything. And when we arrived there, they actually said, if you find a module in the University of London that you like, tell us and we'll get you on that course. So it was a brilliant opportunity. So I was there for a year. I was also working just randomly as a software tester for during that period. And that's where this business opportunity came along. So the idea wasn't actually mine. The idea was actually David Caskell, who's our current chairman, an American guy, was an entrepreneur, had maybe 20 companies under his belt before coming to London. Came to London as a semi-retirement and just randomly enrolled on the same master's course as me. We were friends on the master's course, we knew each other, we worked together on different things, hadn't discussed doing a business at all. Just sort of randomly, out of the blue one day, he called me and said, do you want to get a coffee? And said, okay. We went down and met him for a coffee. And he said, I've got this great idea for a business. I need somebody to do the tech stuff. Can you come on board and do it? So the idea for Language Lab came from him playing video games here, maybe 10 years before. When MMOs first came out, massively multiplayer online games, there was a game called Dark Age of Camelot, where lots of people come online together and complete this quest in the world of Camelot to get points. And to complete a quest, you have to be able to work with your team, so communication was key to the whole thing. It's very, very important. So he was playing with lots of American guys. Communication wasn't an issue, doing well playing. This German guy came online once, and his English wasn't good at all. So he wasn't able to keep up with the team, wasn't able to communicate, wasn't able to do really anything, died a lot. 2 weeks later, same German guy came back. His English seemed perfect. It was all typing back then, so you couldn't see his accent, but he could communicate with the team in real time. He could do this quest. His English was absolutely brilliant. And David sort of spoke to him and said, first to find out it's a real guy, what's going on. It turned out it was the same guy. He hadn't been taking any formal English training. He had learned everything he knew by playing the game. And he had no reason to learn English apart from to play this game. It also turned out he didn't really know English, so he knew everything relative to the game, so he could explain 5 different ways to kill a dragon. But if you asked him what did you have for breakfast, he didn't know, because that wasn't in the game, he hadn't learned that. So that was like a eureka moment. And after that, so David wanted to test this idea and see if we could actually use it in a more relevant way to teach languages. So when I met him and he sort of told me about this idea, I'd come from a background where I'd been to the education system and was quite frustrated by it and felt like, things could be done much, much better here. And not just dyslexic people, everyone could benefit if pedagogy, classroom methodology was very, very different. I'd also been through the experience of, teaching myself stuff at university, learning through my own processes. I thought actually language learning could be done a lot better. And when I started to think about how much I'd learned from computer games, if you take an average computer game like Grand Theft Auto, the strategy guide is bigger than an English language textbook. It's quite a complicated thing. And kids learn all this stuff just for fun by playing the game. So I saw an opportunity here, one, to start a business, which I wanted to do, was exciting, a great career choice for me. Two, to develop something actually valuable, an education methodology that could be useful to people. And so those were the two sort of motivations between jumping in.